Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing an Ultra League team built around an absolute powerhouse of a Pokemon, XL Jellicent. This team actually features 3 buffed Pokemon from the Season 25 Balance Update that have great synergy with each other. On the lead, Clefable, being able to spam out Meteor Mashes every 10 turns. The save switch is the ever-dependable Licky, which does a great job at baiting out Pokemon like Malamar to set up Jellicent for some absolutely filthy 1v3 endgame sweeps. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at the newly buffed XL Jellicent in the Ultra League. Very neutral lead in game number 1, Clefable into Dusknoir. Dusknoirs oftentimes love to put up shields, so I will go for the Meteor Mash bait. Opponent calls the bait. I try for the Shadow Punch catch, but my opponent waits the turn, showing great patience, and will now connect with a hard-hitting, super effective Dynamic Punch. Opponent is going to be retreating out of that matchup and sending in Credilli, and this honestly works out pretty well for me. This team as a whole is a little bit soft to XL Credilli, so seeing it here on the Licky where I can lock in some damage is actually very nice. Rock Tomb will not take the knockout, Licky barely hangs on, and after I land the Shadow Ball, my switch timer will be up. I send back in Clefable, gonna overfarm by 1, play to the CMP tie, and now if my opponent wants this energy, they're going to have to shield. And they do. They want to preserve Credilli, and they want to lock in a debuff on Clefable. I put up the shield, my opponent should be switching back into the Dusknoir, and there's the Shadow Punch right on cue. Shadow Punch will get Clefable very low. Clefable is able to hang on and make a last-second Meteor Mash. This Meteor Mash will easily knock out the low-health Dusknoir. They're going to let it go. In the back is Gastrodon, and now it's time. The star of the show, Jellicent, hits the field. Jellicent, it's straight 4 now to Shadow Ball. It is unbelievably fast-pacing. Add to that, it's absolutely monstrous Ultra League stats, and Jellicent is now an absolute A-tier top meta contender. Jelly goes for the Shadow Ball, devastating catch from the opponent, catching onto Credilli. I undercharge the Shadow Ball to set up a Hex farm down and get some of the energy back that I lost. Back in comes the Gastrodon. Gastrodon is going to need to farm up to a Water Pulse plus a Body Slam. The Surf Bait is successful. Jellicent makes it to the Shadow Ball on the charge stack priority tie, and this game is over. Body Slam bait gets shielded, but it does not matter as I locked in the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball KOs Gastrodon, and Jellicent gets the 1v3 sweep. We see a familiar Pokemon on the lead in the next match as I lead Clefable into Gastrodon. I'm very comfortable staying in and playing out this matchup because Clefable will be able to spam out these Moonblasts pretty quickly. Obviously, Meteor Mash is going to be resisted, so it's not going to be doing anything for Clefable in this matchup. Moonblast does get shielded, and my opponent will be firing off energy. I'm more than happy to no-shield. Clefable is very bulky. Water Pulse will not take the knockout, and my opponent goes for the Body Slam. In hindsight, maybe I should have caught onto the Jellicent, but I decided that I just really didn't want to switch lock the Jellicent, and instead, I would rather just use this as an opportunity now that I know they are completely walled to just get huge Jellicent energy. Jellicent will fire off Shadow Ball lands, Gastrodon now very low. In comes a Shadow Empoleon, and if this is what they're bringing in, they are very weak to Jellicent in the back. Shadow Ball is shielded. My opponent feels like they're panicking a little bit because they have nothing for the Jellicent so far. Ropek lands, getting Jellicent low. Jellicent now going to unleash Shadow Ball, and this is going to be getting Empoleon deep into the red health. I now have a pretty difficult choice. Do I shield the Jellicent? I say no. I'm saving 2 shields for Licky. In comes Licky. They're going to pivot. In the back is Togekiss, and this does actually look like a game that Licky can win. I will have to be very careful with my energy management because my opponent is absolutely loaded on that Gastrodon. I fire off the Body Slam just to check how much damage does this do. The answer is not much. Judging off that damage, I'm going to need to throw a Shadow Ball if I want to knock out the Togekiss. So I shield up the Aura Sphere, farm up just shy of 100 energy, and Shadow Ball should be taking the KO. If they bring in the Gastrodon, I have to click Body Slam. In comes the Gastrodon, and I press the move. This is very important because they have back-to-back charge stacks loaded on the Gastrodon, but they're not going to get them as Body Slam will take the knockout. All that's left in the back is the low-health Empoleon. We make it to the Body Slam. Things got a little bit scary there once Togekiss was revealed because obviously Aura Sphere is very threatening to Licky. But with Jellicent forcing all the shields down from my opponent, Licky was able to take the win. We see a very familiar lead in the next match, leading Clefable into Shadow Dusknoir. Last time, I didn't get my catch, and this time we get our revenge, as Dusknoir has its Shadow Punch caught. That works out amazingly for me. My opponent is going to stay in and fire off Dynamic Punch, but this is basically all their energy, so I'm more than happy to shield. Out comes a Shadow Empoleon. This is where Earthquake would be nice. I did consider double nuke Licky, but I really like the pacing that's offered by Body Slam. Here I think my opponent miscounted, thinking I was at the back-to-back Shadow Balls and they threw on alignment to try and cover for me undertapping, but I didn't have the energy. And now I can just pivot out and send in the Jellicent. Jellicent Drill Peck is going to do absolutely nothing, and I just want this Empoleon gone. It's a huge problem for my Clefable, so I throw the Surf and I take the knockout. My opponent's Dusknoir is very low, so they're going to have to bring in their final Pokemon, which is Shadow Typhlosion. And man, this Typhlosion has its work cut out for it. Surf is absolutely going to be shielded. I'm going to try and go for a Thunder Punch catch onto the Licky. The catch attempt is unsuccessful, but now I'm just going to go for the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to land. That's big damage. My opponent does not want to take any more rollouts, so they will take the knockout with Thunder Punch. But man, they are very, very low on Typhlosion. Back in comes Jellicent. Honestly, I might live this Thunder Punch. I know shield. Oh my goodness, Jellicent, what a beast. They catch the Surf on a Dusknoir. I go for the full undercharge. And now, look at this. Because of the undercharge, we get an absolutely disgusting Fairy Wind farm down with Clefable, and we make the back-to-back Meteor Mashes to secure the win. My opponent only has one shield, and they're so low on Typhlosion. I just throw the second Meteor Mash right away. May as well take the win while I can. Meteor Mash takes the knockout, and that's a good game. Dream Lead in the next match, Clefable into Guzzlord. My opponent safe switches into Gourgeist, and here I actually make a bit of a misplay. The Pokemon that I should have brought in here is actually the Licky. Since Jellicent and Licky both beat Gourgeist, why is it such a massive error that I brought in the Jellicent? Well, it's all to do with what will happen after this matchup ends. My Jellicent will be able to keep switch advantage against the Gourgeist. It's guaranteed. I'm always going to win the twos. However, this is going to set up the nastiest farm down for Guzzlord. Guzzlord is not going to take any damage because it fully walls off the charge attacks from the Jellicent. It's going to get a full farm down, double Sludge Bomb the Clefable, and I'm going to be in a ton of trouble. However, had I brought in Licky here, Licky can actually fight back and get real damage onto that Guzzlord. So I'm able to win switch, but now I'm in trouble. That forces me out to pivot into the Clefable. In the back is Empoleon, and this game could have been so incredibly easy. If I had just brought in the Licky to the Gourgeist, then I would have won switch advantage. I wouldn't have had to pivot because Licky can at the very least get damage onto the Guzzlord, and then Jellicent would have completely shut down the Empoleon. But unfortunately, because of that misclick, this game has now become significantly more tricky. My opponent will take the knockout with Empoleon. Clefable did put up a pretty significant fight, and now I send in Licky. Licky, goes for the Body Slam, but a nice catch and sneak by my opponent as they're able to save Empoleon and get the catch onto Guzzlord. Honestly, the best part of that for my opponent is the free Dragon Tail. That's a lot of free energy they got by timing that catch very precisely. Brutal Swing is going to land. Licky is doing his best here in this neutral matchup, spamming out these Body Slams, trying to get this Guzzlord as low as possible. The bulk on Licky is incredibly helpful because 2 Brutal Swings will not come close to knocking out. And it's a charge attack priority tie. Brutal Swing will not take the knockout. They go for a Sludge Bomb, but it still does not KO. Licky able to hang on. Licky's Body Slam is going to land. There's more where that came from. Back-to-back charge attacks are loaded, and this is going to be the end of Guzzlord. Guzzlord gets KO'd. In comes Jellicent. Jellicent will be hit with the Drill Peck, but this is not a Shadow Empoleon. Drill Peck will fail to take the knockout. Jellicent makes it to the Surf, and that game will be a win. That should have been the easiest game ever, but by switching Jellicent into the Gourgeist instead of the Licky, that made that game actually quite complicated. We move to the next match, once again greeted with a Shadow Dusknoir lead. I'm going to go for the same game plan as before, but my opponent has other plans. They just throw on alignment, completely disrespecting charge attack timing, to probably try and throw me off, because no one's ever going to go for the catch, anticipating someone to throw on alignment. The bait is successful, getting a shield. My opponent is forced to throw on alignment again, because if they didn't, then the Moonblast would be reached. The Shadow Punch does get shielded. I'm going to be full sending now, firing off this Moonblast, hoping my opponent does not double shield, but they do. And now I bring in Licky. I'm going to watch for a catch. My opponent goes for a catch onto Empoleon, but Shadow Ball was the move that I would throw here anyway. so this still ends up working out just fine. I believe in this game, I was accidentally using my bad Clefable. I do have a Clefable that's pretty close to a hundo, so it is significantly worse than the Clefable IVs that are listed here. Let me check the combat power on this Clefable. Yeah, this is the bad Clefable. A turn wait burns the last second of my switch timer, and I'm able to escape the matchup and send in Jellicent. This energy head start is very important because I need to outpace the Dusknoir. Dusknoir had a bunch of energy. If I didn't have an energy head start on the Jellicent, they could have got to the back-to-back and locked in some massive damage. But now, I just knocked them out, I still have a very healthy Jellicent, and my opponent cannot afford to bring in the Empoleon. Instead, they reveal their final Pokemon is going to be Unova Stunfisk, and Stunfisk is not going to like what comes next. Stunfisk can hit for a super effective damage, but man, Discharge is just such an incredibly poor move. The Jellicent will be able to tank this very, very comfortably. Discharge is going to land. There's a simultaneous switch, Licky Licky into the Empoleon, and this is just checkmate. The Stunfisk has way too much that it needs to do. There's a very healthy Licky Licky. I'm very close to a move on the Jellicent, and my opponent will resign the match. Picking up a bad lead in the next match, leading Clefable into Empoleon. My opponent is going to be staying in versus the Licky Licky save switch and firing off the Hydro Cannon, and now out comes their own Clefable. This is a matchup where Licky Licky does have quite a bit of play. Shadow Ball is going to land. Shadow Ball is, I believe, the more efficient charge attack to go for here. I'm now going to fire off a second Shadow Ball as well. Now my opponent is suddenly very, very low. I don't think I'm quite in Moonblast range yet, so I'm going to no shield and get the shield advantage. My opponent goes for the Meteor Mash, and I make a critical error. I undertap the Body Slam, and my opponent reads it and CMP ties me. That's a huge, huge error, because if I went for the rollout sneak and I got it, I could have doubled up on Body Slams and guaranteed a shield advantage for Jellicent in the endgame. Whereas now, I don't have a shield advantage, and I lost basically my entire Clefable. In the back is Shadow Dusknoir, and had I gone for that rollout and gotten a shield advantage, this game is just a win. Jellicent would have swept, but unfortunately, I did not see the vision. I didn't play it as well as I could have, and unfortunately, this team is finally going to suffer a loss. I just fire off the back-to-back surfs. My opponent will know it's a surf, and they know that they do not have to shield. I'm trying to play it out as best as I can to the absolute bitter end, but they survive on 1 HP, and I'm just going to be no shielding here because there's no reason to play this out anymore. Shadow Punch takes the knockout, and we will unfortunately lose that game. Much better lead in the next match, Clefable into Moltres, and the Moltres is not switching out. That's a pretty big surprise. Moltres is going to CMP time fly to my Moonblast, but I believe I actually locked in a Meteor Mash bait. Meteor Mash will still do some pretty nice damage. Opponent calls the bait, and now they're going to be save switching into Armored Mewtwo. Armored Mewtwo is going to be answered with Jellicent. Opponent is going to be mistiming that confusion, and an entire Hex sneaks through. Armored Mewtwo, I was a little bit surprised. Mewtwo actually putting up quite a fight here. I took quite a lot of damage from the Psystrike. I know Psystrike is a very efficient charge attack, and it looks like in hindsight I may have actually needed to go for Double Surf, because it looks like I can't quite get the farm down, and I'm actually going to be forced to undertap. So, honestly, pretty impressed by Armored Mewtwo as a safe swap in this game. My opponent is going to send in Galarian Moltres, and I'm just never going to give that Moltres farm. I pivot into the Licky Licky. Opponent is going to be giving me a free rollout as they fire off the fly, and in the back is Credilli. And Credilli gonna have a pretty terrible time as I still have a full health Licky Licky. I'm down a shield, but I'm up so much energy. So Licky Licky is just gonna output so much consistent pressure. I still have Clefable, which has energy as well. My opponent ends up undertapping and throwing on alignment. I guess it was to desync the switch timers just a little bit because my switch clock would have been up if they didn't throw that move. But even so, I think I'm just going to get too much value out of this Clefable in this game. Clefable, winning charge attack priority over Credilli. Meteor Mash, devastating damage. And there's just no path forward for my opponent in this game. They take the knockout with the Rock Tomb just for Licky Licky to roll out them down. And my opponent will resign the match. Hopping to the final match, we've got a very bulky matchup between Clefable and Unova Stunfisk. If you thought Stunfisk was bulky in the Great League, XL Stunfisk in the Ultra League is even bulkier, able to shrug off neutral hits like they're nothing. Clefable is going to be winning charge attack priority, unleashing Moonblast, and that does some pretty significant damage onto Stunfisk. Stunfisk can't do a lot of damage, but it can get to Mud Bombs very, very quickly. I'm going to overfarm to the max here, CMP tie with a Moonblast, and knock them out before they're able to make it to a third charge attack. Moonblast lands, no, Stunfisk with the 1 HP survive. Stunfisk simply too bulky, and I'm able to win the lead, but I'm lower than I would like to be. In comes Jellicent. I really wanted to pivot out, but I have a very good check to Jellicent with the Licky Licky. So I settle for the Meteor Mash, bring in Licky Licky. My opponent banks energy, and in the back, they have their own Clefable. I do really like the Clefable plus Jellicent pairing. I think it's a very, very strong one, because Jellicent is not going to be a big fan of Pokemon like Galarian Moltres and the Shadow Malamar, although Jellicent can actually fight back quite nicely against Malamar. Malamar obviously has a winning matchup there, but Jellicent can definitely make Malamar sweat. Unfortunately for my opponent, they would have needed a very positive endgame matchup for Clefable to be able to sweep this, and it's a neutral endgame matchup. And if it's a neutral matchup for Jellicent, then Jellicent's going to do quite well. My opponent makes a nice catch, catching the Shadow Ball onto Jellicent, recognizing the Jellicent has no value. And here, I'm actually going to stay in. My opponent should always throw a Surf here, expecting the catch, but I just stay on the field. That allows me to bank a Surf, send in Licky Licky, and with that mind game, we should be well on our way to taking home this win. As Surf is not going to do much, we get the full rollout farm down, and now we exit with charge attacks loaded for the Clefable. We have 100 energy on this Licky Licky. We have a Surf loaded on the Jellicent as well, so this game is over. Firing off Shadow Ball number 1, it looks like Shadow Ball plus Body Slam should be able to do it. I have the Shadow Ball, but it looks like I will not need it. Body Slam is going to land Clefable. Oh my goodness, a second 1 HP survive, but we get the farm down and take the win. All in all, I think Jellicent is unbelievably good in the Ultra League. I know it's pretty strong in the Great League as well, but I wanted to wait. I wanted to save the feature for the Ultra League because I knew Ultra League was where it was going to shine. PvPoke has its Ultra League rankings up, and it lists Jellicent at number 4, and to me, honestly, that just seems accurate. Jellicent is monstrously tanky in the Ultra League, able to shrug off neutral hits like it's nothing, and having consistent 12-turn pacing on Shadow Ball is just absolutely ridiculous. Hex is not an amazing fast move, but in a meta that's as bulky as Ultra League, fast move pressure is not necessarily needed in a lot of situations. Most of the time, you're going to be taking knockouts, not by farming something down, but by firing off charge attacks. So, being able to get to that Shadow Ball in 12 turns instead of 15 is just such a massive, massive buff, and it doesn't take much in terms of improving a Pokemon with as crazy of stats as Jellicent has to turn it from an okay pick to an absolute demon. So Jellicent, it's a Pokemon that I highly, highly recommend using in the Ultra League. Obviously, Jellicent isn't without its tough matchups. It's not going to like Licky Licky, it's not going to like dark types like Guzzlord and Galarian Moltres, but its neutrals are just absurd, and even matchups that it has no business winning, it is still able to fight back and win. The best example of that is the matchup against the XL Credilli, where Credilli just loses the 1s and 2s straight up to Jellicent. A grass type with a grass charge move is losing to Jellicent, and that's just how absurd of a Pokemon Jellicent is in the Ultra League. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is so sincerely appreciated. Thank you guys oh so very much, and until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.